Hello everyone and welcome. It's Shanna. So glad you're here today. Now today I've got the Clematis Poet Etched Dies by Susan Tierney Cockburn. And I've also got my card bases. I was looking for those last night. I have taken the dies and I have die cut all the pieces out in white, and I have stamped the sentiments previously from my video yesterday. And I'm just bringing my Copic markers in. I've got my lightest purple, and I'm laying down a bunch of light purple as the base layer on here. And I am going to color these things up very rotely. I mean, just rough. I mean, I am just scribbling on these things. And when I get to the darker colors, it looks very scribbly, but it's actually going to all come together in the end. And I basically went from light to dark on this. And then I'll start going in the different direction. I think I just show me coloring just the 4 petals for this particular flower, and then I'll go off camera and color the other ones. I'll also bring in a 4th color. It's laying there off to the right. It's kind of a pinky purple. And so I'm just very quickly laying some color down on here, like I said, and it's pretty messy. But it's going to be okay. I'm actually going to, once I get all these colored, I'm going to spray them with one of my oxide sprays, because this flower is really, this particular clematis is actually a pinky purple or a purpley blue flower. And so I've got the purple laid down on there, and now I'm just going to add the blue on top of the purple. And we'll just kind of have an interesting mixed media look. And we're just going to get this laid down on there and add some blue color to them. And then we'll just pull them out of the box, and I've got a mat there. I'm going to lay them on to dry. And then once we get them dry, we'll be able to work with them. And once we do all of our kind of bending and puckering and everything of our flowers, you won't notice those stripy marks. Here's an example. See how pretty that is? So I've got my floral petals laying to dry, and now we're just doing the same thing with the inks. I'm just laying some green color down, and I mean, obviously this is sped up, but I did this very quickly. I didn't take any time at all. I just laid some veining looking coloring on there and wasn't too worried about it. And I'm bringing in my darkest green, and then I'm going to bring in my lighter green, and I think I'll just show, I might not show all of it, I'm not sure. But we're just laying some green down on top of that. And then we're actually going to spray on these. I want to do a couple things to these leaves, because once I got them done, I realized they're really, as I like them, I think they're pretty, but they're not the right color for this flower. It needs to be a little bit more mossy. And so I'll bring in some of my Distressed Oxide Forest Moss and add it once we spray them. But when I get them sprayed, you'll see they would be a perfect leaf for a variety of other flowers, but not for this particular, I guess, version of clematis. And so you see I sprayed that oxide spray on there and just kind of put some yellow down. And I like how they look, but they don't look right for the particular flower. So this is where I bring in the forest moss, and I have got a blending brush, and I'm just throwing some of that down on there and having, some mossier colored looking leaves. And you can still see the kind of the dimension and the veining that I put on there. So now I'm just bending them down the center, and I'm curling these leaves so that they'll have a lot of texture. And I will tell you, I've got a lot more leaves here than I use on my card. I went a little overboard. I made 3 of these flowers, and I've got an A2 size card, and it turns out to be a little bit much. So they're very pretty, but I think I've got too much for the A2 size card. I probably should have put it on a 5x7 card. So what I'm doing now is I'm just taking my little glimmer mat that you can lay your plate on when it's hot, when you are done with your glimmer machine, because it's rubbery, and it's also got some grids, so it's enabling me to kind of get some nice dimension on these leaves. And I'm just kind of showing you, I'm using a stylus for that. But you can also do it with your fingers, and I'm going to show you that. Here I'm going to bend them in the middle and then kind of roll those leaves around and just really adding some dimension to it by just pinching and twisting and, kind of pushing them together and just creating some dimension. You don't have to have any fancy tools to get the dimension that you need. Just use your fingers and just play around with them. Basically, you're just bending that paper in all different directions and creating some puckers, and it will give you an interesting looking flower. So I wanted to show you both methods for doing that. And I think it turns out nice. It actually makes my kind of my where I used my Copic markers and just made those wispy looking lines on there. It just, by puckering it like that, you won't hardly notice them, especially once we get them layered up. So I've done my other two flowers, and I saved this one for the camera, and I'm just layering it up. And I'm trying to make my petals for my leaves just kind of stick up in all different directions. And just give them a little press there in the center, and then just kind of lift the leaves so that we've got a very dimensional looking flower. And I just kind of coned that one. I wanted it to kind of look like a cone, and just give it a press. Now I've got my pick tool, and that's the cap from it. And I just rolled these, I curled these, I guess they're stamens or whatever, up and stuck them in that so that it would hold it kind of in a cone shape, and then it'll just lay in the middle. Now I'm going to show you what we do on this. You're going to snip it, and it'll create 2 prongs instead of 1. And you're going to snip them all the way around. And they're kind of lifting and separating as you snip them. And so it's making them look even more dimensional. And you've got 3 of them. And you're going to layer 3 of them up. And then you're going to bring the strip stamen piece and add to the center. So I'm just going to basically, once I get these all cut, I'm going to just kind of cup these and create a cup, and then we'll, layer them inside of each other. And then with this curl piece, we'll put this in the very center of it. So we're going to curl this much like I did the video from yesterday. In fact, just the same way. I've got a layer of glue on there, and I'm just curling it up into a pretty tight little ball there. And I'm just pinching it with my tweezers so that the glue will stick it all down. And now I'm just wrapping these around my stylus. And you could use a pencil, you could use a pen lid, anything like that, to just kind of cup them around there. And then we'll just stack them inside of each other with some glue. So I'll put a little dab of glue in each layer, and then set the next one inside of there. And then we've got room for that little tiny piece that I've got in my tweezers there. And I'm just going to stick them in there. And so that I can keep it nice and straight, I'm just shoving it in that little cap. You could use any kind of a cap. And then letting the glue kind of dry. I gave it time to dry. I'm going to pull it out. I'm just going to put a dab of glue in the center, and then we'll just stand that up right in the center. And we've got a nice little cluster for our center, and then we can kind of position our petals around that. So we've got 3 great big flowers, and we've got a whole stack of leaves that I've prepared. And I'm just going to bring in a blue, kind of a purpley blue panel, and I've used the large die of the month to create that frame. And then I've used the embossing folder of the month from Spellbinders to emboss this white panel. And this is just going to be my home base for my florals. And I think it looks really pretty. Now I'm going to start layering these mammoth things on there, and I'm realizing, wow, this is overkill. But I'm going to go all the way with it. So I'm just kind of squishing them in a little bit to see if I can make them look any smaller. And then I'm just going to layer them up on here, and we're going to glue them down as big and as full as they are. So I'm just going to put some glue on this, and we're going to lay it down on there, give it a good press, and we'll move on to our next one. It's moving around. I haven't allowed it time to dry. And I'm going to kind of squeeze this one in, trying to make room. And we're going to tuck it in and give it a press. And then we're going to add this third one. But I'm thinking I need to add a sentiment first. So I am going to grab the thank you sentiment that is part of the Poet's Garden sentiments. And I'm going to tuck it in here. And then I will lay my third flower underneath it on the left side. And I probably should have paused and maybe thought about a 5x7 card, or perhaps only put one of the flowers on there. But I made them and I'm going to use them. So we're just going to glue this one down, and then we'll just tuck a bunch of leaves in there. And I will have a ton of leaves left over because I made far too many. The die for the leaves say 2 to 3. And so I think I made, I don't know, 4 or 6 passes with it on the press. And so I've got a lot of leaves there. And I like the color of the leaves once I added that forest moss to it. I think it matches better, and it is a better representation of that type of leaf. I think about the clematis that I have growing on the trellis outside my house. And those leaves, this looks more like the leaf that is on there. Now, I'm not certain of the variety of my clematis, and I know these are a certain one because Susan mentioned in her video that they're a particular breed of them. But anyway, this is my finished card, and it's very dimensional, and it would need special packaging. So I hope you like it. If you do, hit the like. If you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.